The situation is this. There are 4 men in a car driving down a main street. Suddenly another car pulls up in front of them and cuts them off. 2 men jump out of this car, grab the 4 men, beat them up and say, "You're no damn good. Why don't you go back where you come from? We're going to kill you. Why don't you get out of here?" And I say, who are the 4 men? Who are the 2 men in the car? Where did it happen and when did it happen? Every hand goes up. Immediately, every hand goes up, and every hand has the wrong answer. The wrong answer is the 4 men in the car are Jewish. The 2 men who cut them off are Nazis. It happened somewhere in Germany or Eastern Europe in the late 30s or early 40s. And they say, well, you know, how can that be wrong? We've been studying this all semester, and the right answer is the 4 men in the car are Asian. The 2 men who cut them off are Caucasian. It happened in Douglaston, Queens on Northern Boulevard in 2006. And they sit there with their mouths open saying, oh my God, but that's the Holocaust you're telling us about, and that's hate crimes. As a result of that one exchange with my students, we had a conference on campus. And the conference was for community groups saying, what do you do if you are a victim of a hate crime? And we had a large turnout. We had over 100 community groups here. Plus, we had representation, Inspector Michael Osgood from the Hate Crimes Task Force of the New York Police Department, District Attorney Brown. We had people from the NAACP, the ADL, Commissioner Kirkland's office, the New York State Division on Human Rights. We put together a program, and what we found out when we opened the program, we had a panel talking about their experiences, and I asked the people in the audience, when you hear what these people are saying, if you are any way related or have experienced some type of situation as they are describing, stand up. 73 people out of the 110 people there stood up and said they realized that they had been victims of hate crimes, victims of bias and discrimination without even knowing it. And so we began the idea of taking a Holocaust studies program and addressing it towards addressing hate crimes as viewed through the Holocaust. One of the reasons we're so successful with our program is the backing we've had for the administration. The president of the college immediately gave us support on there, and without saying anything further what he did, I'd like to introduce the president of Queensborough Community College, Dr. Eduardo J. Marti.
Hear me? This is a little bit better microphone. So use this one. Well, good morning. Good morning. The last time I saw so many principals was when I was a kid and was sent to the principal's office. Thank you so very, very much for being here. As Arthur indicated, the Holocaust Research Center at our college, it's really a labor of love that has been ongoing for the last over 20 years now. It's still housed in a very small room at the bottom, in the basement of the library. But as of September 13, mark that date, out of September 13, it will be in that very beautiful facility that you saw when you drove in the main campus. And it will be a worthy monument for the work that has been done by Holocaust survivors for over 20 years. Ladies and gentlemen, today we're doing the right thing. And just by the presence of the individuals who have come to greet you and to be with you, you recognize that this is something that is good, something that needs to be done, and something that will be a success for the city of New York. And you will hear from all of the individuals who came to bring you greetings. But let us pause for a moment. Let us think about what we're doing. We are going to spend the day looking at hate crimes. But the reason that we're looking at hate crimes is because prejudice is the root cause of everything, from bullying students in one another, from prejudicial actions that take place. And most important, we need to get to the point that we educate our students so that they are never quiet when they see that kind of action. That's really what we're talking about. We're going to get case studies, and we're going to go through exercises that enable us to ensure that we can do this. But the reason that we are attacking prejudice is because prejudice, as the foundation of all activities that can end up being a hate crime, needs to be addressed. The Holocaust Resource Center at Queensborough Community College is a laboratory. It is not a museum. And with all due respect to the generosity of public officials and private donors, the Holocaust Resource Center is not for the community so much as it is for our students. What we want to do is our 13, 14, maybe next year even 15,000 students who come to our doors as the portals of entry into the university, the new Americans, the immigrants, the individuals who have been put in a position that they hunger for education, but they have been denied access into more selective institutions. Those individuals need to be not only educated and given the tools to be able to do well in their future endeavors, but they must be educated to be good citizens of this community. And good citizenship means that they have to understand other cultures. They have to understand how to treat individuals who are not like them. So I am delighted that we have taken something that was a very small study area, and we have expanded that to understand through the lessons of the Holocaust what can happen when prejudice is left to be unbridled. And if the prejudice becomes institutionalized, as we know happened in the Second World War and has happened in Rwanda and has happened in other places of this world, that's when you have genocides, massacres, and clearly, let's hope that we never have a Holocaust again. So I am delighted to welcome you today. I am looking forward to learning from the case studies. I will stay throughout the conference because I believe that we at Queensborough can learn a lot from you who are in the field, and I am delighted that my good friend Arthur has been able to put this together. I can't get off the podium without saying something about this man. And I need to tell you, obviously I started here 9 years ago. I looked at the Holocaust Resource Center. I believed that it had to be put in a different setting. And at that time, it was a resource center, a place where scholars came to learn and to study about the Holocaust. Arthur came to my office to tell me that the $1.5 million, which was at the time what we were looking for, it turned out to be much more than $1.5 million, was secure, but that he was retiring from public service. And I said to him, well, you know, what I really need is I need somebody who's an educator, somebody who can help us educate the community about what is happening at the college and about the Holocaust Center. And he said, well, you know, I'm retired. And I said, well, you know, I wish I could afford you. He said, well, I can't make more than $25,000 a year. So I said, you're hired. God honest truth. And he has taken this center from a sleepy little academic environment to something that is a force in the community. So Arthur, publicly, I want to thank you for what you have done.
That was a statement I've always regretted making. Okay. Okay. One of the real pleasures I get out of my job is you run into a group of interesting people. Now, I originally started in 1960 as a teacher in junior high school, 12 on the Lower East Side. It's now an apartment house. But I remember and coming through the system for 30 years, and and my specialty is curriculum, I would get an order from a superintendent saying, put together a curriculum, and you'd form a study group, and you'd put it together. And every once in a while, the superintendent would come in, look around, and say, you guys are really doing good. We're really proud of you, and then disappear. When it came to writing the curriculum for this program, that changed. And we did this in conjunction with the Office of Commissioner Galen Kirkland, the New York State Commissioner on Division of Human Rights. And what was so unusual about it was that he came not only to every meeting that was there, but sat down at the table and put out the ideas and just rolled up his sleeves and became, instead of a commissioner, a curriculum writer. And that's the reason that we were so successful in putting them in. I'd like to call him up now, Commissioner Kirkland.
Good morning, everybody. It is a real pleasure for me to be here today because I've spent so much of my career addressing the problem of bigotry and hate in our society. Dr. Flug talked about my working on the curriculum. Well, it reminded me of the work I did at the New York City Civil Rights Coalition when we were preparing to begin to respond to the tragic murder of Yusuf Hawkins in 1989 in the community of Bensonhurst. And instead of just having a demonstration and a photo opportunity, we really wanted to reach out to young people in that community and begin to help raise their consciousness of what it means to attack somebody because of prejudice and what a hate crime really does to people. So we worked on a curriculum, and we actually met with students for 12 years. Norman Siegel and I did, teaching a course in civil rights and race relations at New Utrecht High School, which was one of the most rewarding experiences in my life because we were able to engage through the Socratic method in conversations, dialogues with students who were able to understand from their peers what it felt like to be on the receiving end of bigotry and hate, and to see them begin to understand why it's absolutely important for us to have mutual respect. So today is a really very important day for us because I'm absolutely convinced that as a result of what we do here today, we will be able to better serve the needs of young people in our schools who have been targeted for either a bias-related incident or a hate crime. This is vitally important work because if you're in a school setting and you become a victim of some type of an assault, if there isn't a response on the part of the institution or the adults in your environment, you're going to begin to think, you can begin to believe that nobody cares, or even worse, the community condones what happened. And we can't allow that to happen because, frankly speaking, young people who are subjected to that type of thing can have their educational paths interrupted, their ability to develop their full powers, their full talents undermined. And we cannot allow that to happen. I also think that it's important to recognize that the New York State human rights law, a lot of people don't know this, really mandates that the division make it possible for everyone in the state of New York to fully participate in the economic, cultural, and intellectual life of New York. And so this type of work on our part is critical. I think that if the people who are administering our schools and our teachers, when they hear a racial or homophobic slur and they don't respond, they're retreating from an opportunity to take some of the pain out of that incident. And that's something that is really a very culpable act of omission. And that's one of the reasons why Governor David Paterson directed that we begin to offer programs in school-based settings to help young people learn about human rights. And so our office has initiated a school-based program in Ithaca High School, in Niagara Falls High School, and Frederick Douglass Academy in New York City. And we plan to expand that program this coming academic year. So I'm very excited to be here this morning because I want to see what we can do to assist you as educators to make it possible for you to lead your institutions, the people that work with you and for you, to be able to have the wherewithal to stand up and to help those who are suffering now and who have suffered in the past and who will suffer in the future. But we know there is something we can do to help them. I want to thank our partners in this initiative, the New York City Department of Education, the Kupferberg Holocaust Resource Center and Archives, Queensborough Community College, Queens District Attorney Richard Brown, Queensborough President Helen Marshall, City Council Speaker Christine Quinn, and the New York City Police Department Anti-Hate Crimes Task Force. Thank you so much for coming out for this very important conference.
Thank you, Commissioner. Out of order, and just briefly, I'd like to call on Assemblyman Mark Weprin. He has a community meeting that's going to start, well, it started 5 minutes ago. So, Mark, you just want to say a few brief words.
Thank you. I'll use the bad mic briefly, and I appreciate the indulgence, commissioners, judge, the borough president, and the great Dr. Marti, who, this is the perfect place to have a conference like this because probably the two most diverse places in all of maybe the state of New York are Queensborough Community College and the Home Depot over off College Point Boulevard. Those two places are the two most diverse places. If you ever walk down the aisles of that Home Depot, boy, it's unbelievable. But this is terrific. This program is terrific. You know, some years ago, I was a co-sponsor of a law that mandated the teaching of slavery and the Holocaust in our schools. It's something we've been trying to do. We haven't gotten to as far as we like, and it's this curriculum that's going to help get us there. And living in Queens and seeing so many diverse ethnic groups and racial groups, and you working in schools, those of you who work in schools, see how many diverse types of people we have. The amazing thing about Queens is not that we're so diverse, it's how well we get along considering. But no matter how much progress you make, there are always stories like the story that Dr. Fluke told about Douglaston 2 years ago. And just yesterday in Greenwich Village, there was a crime. I haven't heard the update on it, so I apologize. So today I didn't hear, but there was a gentleman beaten because of his sexual orientation, supposedly. But those types of crimes happen every day still, and we need to try to root that out by teaching tolerance, by trying to root out the ignorance that has caused it. So I compliment everybody involved in this, Speaker Quinn and everybody else who's been involved in this. This is a very important initiative, and you should be very proud of yourselves, and I look forward to seeing it come to fruition. Thank you, Arthur, and thank you very much for letting me run away.
Mark, thank you very much. You've heard from the educators, you've heard from the legislation. Now let's go to the First Lady of Queens. I always thought that the General Assembly was something that met in the United Nations until I realized that Helen Marshall, in addressing the problems of diversity, started her own General Assembly. And not only has she been effective in that, but she's really been effective in supporting these programs that we're here for today. So, Borough President Helen Marshall.
Well, maybe I can use this one. I'll just put it on my jacket. I usually make you do. Good afternoon. Good morning. I, too, am a teacher. That is my profession. That's what I got my degree in. Helping children to be healthy in all ways is crucial to every teacher, in addition to fostering their intellectual development. And today, I want to start off by thanking the Harriet and Kenneth Kupferberg. This family has been so generous, not only to Queensborough Community College, but to Queens College, of which is my alma mater. They have supported very, very important things and left a mark on our borough that is absolutely tremendous. I, as your borough president, have both the responsibility and the privilege of spending your tax dollars. And I have put $2 million into this wonderful center to make sure that it happens. And if you just saw the structure, I mean, I can't tell you, it almost brought tears to my eyes. It's so beautiful outside. And that Kristallnacht, I hope I'm saying it right, which was the beginning of Hitler, okay? That's the design that you see so beautifully out there, so we should never forget. I'm African American, and so much of my life has been dedicated to bringing black and white together. And my children, they're grown now. In fact, my oldest son is now 25 years old. But we worked hard to make sure that our children grew up in an integrated society. And I'm very proud to say they are there, and they're navigating in this world. But I also I've worked with all ages of children, young children, 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds. If they just come from the right family, they're no problem whatsoever, as long as you allow them to just be themselves and to interact with one another. The only way it gets negative is if we, the parents and the adults, make it negative for them. But I want to say today, in Queens County, it's almost impossible to have a classroom where you don't have children from all over the world. Children with all headdresses and they just talk with one another because they're all the same age. And those people who are teachers in high schools and junior high schools, I know that you know what I know. They're healthier. Why? Just simply because they're together. We fought so long to end segregation. Even in New York City public schools, we fought so hard. If we just allow the children to be with one another, they'll work things out. And they'll see one another as peers, and it's a better situation. Try drama classes with them. Let them write the scripts and let them act out. You're going to find wonderful, and I'm sure that many of the teachers here have done things like that. But you have wonderful children to work with today, and as I move around the schools, and a real treat for me is to visit the schools. I mean, that's the best thing you could do for me on a work day, and I get to do that from time to time. My staff knows how much I like to do that and observe kids and encourage them. So today, we are celebrating well, it's not really the beginning because we really started quite some time ago. Dr. Flug has been an inspiration from the very beginning. And he had this dream, and this dream is now a reality. This is not, it is a museum because you're going to see many different artifacts and things here, but it has life, it's going to live. And right now, every time we have any kind of bias incident, we come right here. And sitting in the audience, at least for the first 5 or 6 rows, are students, junior high school and high school students, listening and learning. I remember one where we had a man who was a Holocaust victim, and he could barely get up to the stage, up to the front of the room and sit down. But when he sat down, whoo, what he said to those young people. Many of them had no idea of what people have gone through in the past. And I know that it made an impression upon them. It still makes an impression upon me when I see some of the films and things that I see. So today, we're talking to the people who know how to teach children and know how to make them excited about things and know also how to evaluate where that child stands, those who need help in one direction or the other. But let's speak to their highest ideals. Take the highest road that we can with them so that they can understand that they're going to take over the world. They're our insurance for the future. And if we don't prepare them for it in all ways, my son is an engineer out in California designing satellites. And out there in California, what the teachers do, they volunteer to take their students for trips around the world. My brother-in-law did it because he was head of the arts department at Beverly Hills High School. But my son's teacher, he took Japanese in school, my grandson. And his teacher volunteered to take the students to Japan. They went for about a 7-day trip. Well, that little rascal of a grandson of mine arranged to go back to Japan with a host family. It was a grandmother and a grandfather. And generally, Japanese people are not necessarily very tall. Well, they had their grandson with them, and he was as tall as my grandson. And he rode to school on a bicycle. He ate the food. It changed his whole outlook on life. He wanted to be an astrophysicist, not now. He wants to deal with international affairs, financing, or what have you, but he feels that the world is his. And all of our children should feel that the world is his. And so I'm very, very happy about the teachers coming today. The curriculum, the Holocaust curriculum, is absolutely fabulous. And I'm hoping that the people in this room are going to make this world a better place through all the wonderful things you're going to do for the children. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms. Marshall. When we first started the program, we reached out for help, legal help, and we went local at the very beginning. And if you know anything about Queens, if you want legal help and you want to go local, you contact the Honorable Richard A. Brown, the Queens District Attorney. Judge Brown.
Thank you. I'm delighted to have with me this morning two of the stalwarts of my Hate Crimes Bureau, Mariella Herring and Michelle Goldstein, the chief and the bureau chief of my Hate Crimes Bureau, both of whom work very, very closely with the New York City Police Department's Hate Crimes Task Force under the leadership of Commissioner Kelly. It's been about a year now, Arthur, as I recall, since I was last year at Queensborough, and we talked about crimes about hate and bias, and we underscored our commitment at that time to doing everything within our power to prevent them from occurring. Today, we add an important ingredient to that commitment. This conference, which I would call a landmark conference, which is aimed at training educators about hate crimes and crimes of discrimination, conference that will empower each of you in this room this morning to convey critically important information and skills and values to students throughout our county. All of us in this room are committed against acts that are motivated by hate and bias, particularly acts that involve violence, intimidation, and destruction of property based upon bias or prejudice. Unfortunately, we see from time to time such instances becoming more commonplace, and we attack them very, very quickly and very, very substantially in terms of our response. In those instances where regrettably such actions occur, we want to be in a better position to promptly identify them, to access available resources to respond effectively. And we do so and we respond very, very vigorously. And in those cases where criminal activity is involved, we prosecute very, very vigorously. So I want you to know that I'm delighted to be here this morning with Mariella and Michelle and some of the other folks from our office, and to join with all of you, and particularly our colleagues in the police department under the leadership of Commissioner Kelly. This is an important training session, if you will, and the Queens District Attorney's Office is very proud to be a part of it. So thank you so much, Arthur, for having us here.
Thank you so much, Judge Brown. And now, you know, I've always saved this when I really don't know what to say. Person who doesn't need any introduction to the people of New York, Police Commissioner Raymond Kelly.
Thank you very much. On behalf of the police department, I want to thank all of you for being here and for your commitment to understanding and preventing hate crimes. You know, by and large, we are a pretty tolerant city. Last year, we had reported, now it's reported, granted, it may certainly be more than this, 234 hate crimes in a city of now getting close to 8.4 million people, the most diverse city in the world. Now, that is down 62% from where it was 16 years ago. But of course, one hate crime is one too many. I want to assure you that we take every complaint, every hate crime allegation very, very seriously. So far this year, we have 72 complaints. 6 of them are either in or around schools, a school setting. And you know, we know, that certainly there can be physical injury with a hate crime, but there can certainly be psychic injury, deep emotional scars that come about as a result. Now, policing in an educational environment for the police department is indeed a challenge. We're all in this together, administrators, principals, teachers, our school safety agents, our police officers. We all have to work together to make for a safe learning environment. And we have a major commitment. We have over 5,000 school safety agents and several hundred police officers assigned to our schools. Now, each of them receives training on how to identify, how to spot a bias crime. And we have, I believe, the best investigative entity in the country for hate crimes, and that is the Hate Crimes Task Force, and you can hear a presentation by Inspector Michael Osgood, who he and his people do a truly outstanding job. They're very aggressive, and they pull out, there's no stops. They fully engage every time there's an allegation of hate crime. Now, Mike is going to talk to you about some definitions. He's going to tell you about the 10 classes of people who are protected, and he's going to talk to you about how you or anyone who is a victim can contact the police. The Hate Crimes Task Force reports directly to the Chief of Detectives. Every hate crime to us is a major crime. And we treat it as we would a robbery or a homicide. We devote a lot of resources to it. And I believe you're also going to show a video, and this video is going to treat in part the case of an Ecuadorian immigrant that was brutally assaulted and killed, died as a result of his injuries, while racial and anti-gay slurs were being hurled. We devoted 30 detectives for 80 days for this investigation until the 2 people responsible for this were arrested. Now, both of them were over 25 years of age, but we know that at least 50% of the people who engage in hate crimes are young males between the ages of 13 and 18. And of course, the assumption is that the vast majority of them are going to our schools. So we urge you to communicate and to influence them, to let them know that we have indeed a zero tolerance policy when it comes to hate crimes. And together, working together, we can really make a difference in a very important area. So again, my thanks for being here, and have a great conference.
Now we've gone statewide, we've gone citywide, we've gone borough-wide, and now let's get back home to the New York City Department of Education. I'd like to introduce Anthony Orzo, Deputy and CEO.
Difficult. I'll hold it. Good morning, I'm Anthony Orzo. I'm here representing Elena Constant, our Chief Executive Officer for the Office of School and Youth Development at the Department of Education. Our office is responsible for safety and student support for New York City public schools. I'm delighted to be here this morning, at a conference that highlights the crucial role that school staff members play in intervening in and preventing bias-based behaviors. Each of our students bring to our school community the richness of our city's cultural diversity and the desire for respect. As educators, we have a fundamental responsibility to ensure that each of our schools and each of our classrooms is safe, supportive, and inclusive of all of our students. We have an equally essential responsibility to promote respect, diversity, and clearly communicate to our students on a daily basis that prejudice and discriminatory behavior have no place in our schools, and certainly should have no place in their lives. Our efforts to promote respect for diversity are fundamental to our students' social growth and to build their capacity to be productive and caring adults. Our intervention in bias-based behavior not only profoundly affects our students' interact with one another in our classrooms, but also on how they interact with diverse people and in their neighborhoods. I want to applaud your attendance today at this conference. Your presence shows your commitment to promoting respect for diversity. And I want to leave you with the words of Walter Annenberg. If we lack respect for one group, and there is a tendency for that attitude to spread, it becomes infectious and no one becomes safe from the ravages of prejudice. This conference is the fruition of a collaboration with Queensborough Community College, State Human Rights, the City Human Rights Office, the Queens DA. And we were really excited to be here today, to have you here today. And I want to thank someone in our office who really has driven this whole project for the Department of Education. And some of you know her by name. She does so much work around conflict resolution, peer mediation, and the new Chancellor's Reg that came out for Respect for All. She is amazing for our children. I want to thank her for the work she does for the children of our city. And here she is right here with us today. Connie Cuddle, thank you very much for all of you.
Now it's time to do the real heavy lifting and the work. So what we did at the very beginning is a way of setting the tone for this meeting today. Now that you've heard why we're here, we put together a brief video. This video identifies and sets the tone for hate crimes. It will also be available to you should you want to use it in your schools.
Unsere teure Heimat, unser teures deutsches Reich, sieg heil!
My grandparents, uncles, aunts, cousins, 26 of them were killed in Auschwitz.
A Syracuse man is due in court tomorrow on a murder charge. Police say that he killed a man because he's gay. Investigators say that 20-year-old Dwight DeLee shot Moses Cannon after he and his brother pulled up to a party at 411 Seymour Street Friday night. Moses lived his life as a woman, and family and friends knew him as Letitia Green.
I went to the door, and I seen all these police, and ambulance outside. So I ran outside and I said, what's going on? What's going on? They said, she's been shot. Letitia was gone. Because I don't understand why.
A candlelight vigil tonight for a native of Ecuador killed in a heinous crime in Suffolk County. Police say 37-year-old Marcelo Lucero was stabbed to death because he was Hispanic. A 17-year-old is now charged with a hate crime and several others with assault.
Earlier today, the families of the teens were in court. All 7 are students at Patchogue Medford High School and were charged with gang assault. The first in line here is 17-year-old Jeffrey Conroy. Cops say he was the one who stabbed Lucero. He's also charged with manslaughter.
You guys, you can take a life, and in your hands, you can take a life like this, because nobody deserves it. It's not because it was my brother. It can be somebody else. It can be me. But nobody has the right to take a life.
But when there is a crime, a hate crime, it's a crime against your very existence. It has a much further impact, a much bigger impact than your normal crime, and it's actually a crime against the community.
Police are calling an attack on a pair of Brooklyn brothers a hate crime. It happened at the intersection of Kossuth Place and Bushwick Avenue early Sunday morning. Police say 31-year-old Jose Sukusanai was walking home with his brother Ramel when one of them stopped to give the other his coat. At that time, police say a group of men jumped out of an SUV and beat them with a glass bottle and a baseball bat, all while yelling anti-gay and anti-Latino slurs.
Those 5 days that Jose was in the hospital were the worst days in my life. Everything has finished. It went away. Everything is destroyed. Everything is not there. Don't want to go back. I haven't come back. I'm mentally sick. I am being treated by psychology, and I would like to go back there. Don't want to talk about it.
If we don't learn what a hateful life means to a person, then we're never able to get rid of it.
The gentleman who you saw at the beginning, I know the sound was a little off, his name's Steve Buerger. He is a Holocaust survivor. He's 89 years old. He lives in Little Neck. He is on our panel of speakers at the Holocaust Center, and an excellent, excellent speaker. If any of you would like to have him come visit your school, please see me and we'll make arrangements for that. When we put together the program, we needed someone from law enforcement who is going to set the tone for the process that we're going into today, and we called upon Inspector Michael Osgood, the NYPD's Hate Crimes Task Force, regarding hate crimes as an identity crime. Inspector Osgood.
Okay, good morning. I'm Inspector Michael Osgood. I'm the commanding officer of the NYPD. No, that's not the one. You got it. I'm the commanding officer of the NYPD's Hate Crime Task Force. Give us a second while we get the PowerPoint up. For this morning, I got about a 10-minute block of instruction where I'm going to speak about, real quickly, the hate crime statute. Follow me will be the Queens District Attorney's Office. They're going to go into it in a greater depth. But I have to set the, I sort of have to go into the statute quickly so I can give you some ways to actually go in, so someone can actually recognize a hate crime. So, okay, it's common for me to go and speak to the public, and it's common for me to go around the city. Everywhere I go, I put this slide up, 188 NYC safe. Information is needed to save lives. If you see something, say something. Obviously, everybody knows what happened 8 years ago down at the World Trade Center. 3,000 people were killed. And this number goes into the NYPD's FBI Joint Terrorist Task Force, which is a group of NYPD detectives and special agents from the FBI. You do not have to, in fact, know there's a criminal act going on. If you have any sense, any rumors, any thoughts, you can call this number, pass that information over to the Joint Terrorist Task Force. They will take that information and they will look at it, they'll examine it, and you might be able to save lives. This is the basis of thought for the hate crime statute, and that is the right to identity safety, that everyone has a right to walk down the street and to be safe in their identity. I hold this to be a superior right. It's a right which is embedded in the Constitution. The concept of individual liberty is prime in our country, and that concept of basic individual liberty transfers to this thing called right to identity safety, where we all have a right to walk down the street and to be safe in our identity. Here's the key overarching concept for this morning over the next 10 minutes, and that is something called identity-motivated criminality. Criminality motivated by the identity of the victim, as compared to economically motivated criminality, or as compared to personal dispute motivated criminality. Once again, this will be the takeaway for this morning. If you go away with this one concept, that'll be a good thing. Hate and crime. There's an element of hate in all crime. If I'm going to rob you for economic reasons, or I'm going to assault you because you stole my girlfriend, I have to hate you somewhat. So the phrase hate crime is a misnomer, and it causes confusion. So one of the things I'm going to try to set up this morning is to give you a more exact, to give you a more precise way to actually conceptualize hate crime. And once again, to go over to the key overarching concept, identity-motivated criminality. Here are some offense motivations. These are common motives why people commit crimes. Financial gain, that's probably the main one. Sexual gratification or power. Crime concealment, witness elimination, criminal enterprise, personal dispute, mentally defective, gang initiation. But the last one is how we classify hate crimes, identity or protected group selection. There are probably more motives why people commit crimes, but these are the main ones. Here's that law I was talking about. This is the statute in the state of New York that goes and protects people's identity. This is the New York State Penal Law, Article 45. Article 45 of the New York State Penal Law is the statute which defines identity-motivated criminality. Here is the brunt of the statute. The statute, if you opened up the New York State Penal Law, is about 3 pages long. This is the key component to it. I hate to read it to you, but I will. A person commits a hate crime when he or she commits a specified offense and either intentionally selects the person against whom the offense is committed in whole or substantial part because of a belief or perception regarding the race, color, national origin, ancestry, gender, religion, religious practice, age, disability, or sexual orientation of a person, regardless of whether the belief or perception is correct. Once again, the statute is about 3 pages long, but this sets up the key core logic to the statute. These are the 10 protected groups or classes that are given added protection in the state of New York. There's some redundancy in them: race, color, national origin, ancestry, gender, religion, religious practice, age, disability, and sexual orientation. These are the groups which the state lawmakers have determined that should be given added protection. They could expand them. They could go and decrease them. Right now, these are the groups that get added protection. These are the classes that get added protection in the state of New York. These are some key constructs to that text that I read to you. That the key one is this first one, and once again, the Queens District Attorney's Office will do something right after me on it. But the key one is this first construct up top: whole or substantial part. Whole or substantial part of the statute means the main motivation for the crime must be the identity of the victim. The substantial motivation, the main reason for the crime, has to be the identity of the victim. Here's another key part of the statute, and it basically means that if the offender and the victim are different identities, that's not sufficient to make it a hate crime. Proof of the defendant's or victim's identity does not by itself constitute legally sufficient evidence satisfying the people's burden. Here's the takeaway. Here is the key overarching concept. This is a more precise way to view what a hate crime is. It's easier to make a cognitive judgment off it. Once again, there's hate in all crime. If I'm going to rob you for economic reasons, I have to hate you somewhat. If I'm going to assault you, I have to hate you somewhat. So identity-motivated criminality is a more exact way to conceptualize hate crime. Criminality motivated by the identity of the victim. Is that victim in those 10 protected classes, and did I substantially go and select that victim because he's a member of those 10 protected classes? Here's a second way to conceptualize this, a little bit more logically defined. Substantially motivated, protected group selection, criminality. Once again, you're going to, if you select somebody from one of those 10 protected classes, if you are substantially motivated to make that selection, and it's a crime, it's a hate crime. Now, that the question we ask as criminal investigations, doing a hate crime investigation is what group is the victim from? Is that victim from the economically motivated group? Is that victim from the sexual orientation group? Is that victim from a gang initiation group? So the key thing that we logically look at is what group, what class is the victim from? Now, we have a three-part rule to assist one in actually making that judgment. Is an event a possible hate crime? There are three components to the rule. There are three questions to the rule. The first one, is the act a crime? If the act is not a crime, well, then it can't be a hate crime. It could be covered under some other laws in the state of New York, but it has to be a crime for the New York City Police Department to actually have authority. Two, is there evidence that the crime may be identity motivated? Is there some evidence? If there is, if it's a yes, then we move on to the third question. If it's a no, the event is still a crime. We can still take a report. We will make an arrest. We will do an investigation. But there has to be some evidence that it's identity motivated. And then the third part of the rule is the evidence supportive of whole or substantial identity motivation? Do we have evidence that we can make a rational judgment that the main reason for this act, this main reason for this criminal act, is that the victim was a member of those 10 protected classes? Okay, here are some determinants that we use to assist us in making the judgment. This is not a check-off list. This is not a cookbook recipe. You apply these determinants, there's about 9 of them. You apply these determinants in a fully contextual manner, and you evoke a judgment just like an auto mechanic would make a judgment on your car as he hears the symptoms, or a medical doctor would make a judgment as he gets the facts in regards to your case. Determinant number 1, statements made by the perpetrator. That's self-evident. You know, what did he say? 2, identity-oriented phrases used by the perpetrator. Did he use the N-word? Did he use other type of descriptors? That we look at the order of dialogue used. We look at the frequency of the identity-oriented phrases used. We look at the intensity of the identity-oriented phrases used. 3, offensive symbols, words, or acts. Obviously, if someone puts a swastika on a synagogue, that's self-evident, stands out, but it's something that we look at. Number 4 is quite interesting. It's called absence of motivation. It's a somewhat of a complex type of determinant, but we can have an event where we can't tell what the motive is. You have a gentleman of one identity walking down the street. You have somebody of a different identity, sets upon him, assaults him, beats him unconscious, doesn't rob him, doesn't know him, didn't live next door to him. The victim didn't fire him from his place of employment. What's the motivation? So sometimes we will take a case, sometimes we will make the argument that the absence of motivation is an indicator that the victim was selected because he was a part of the 10 protected classes. Number 5, the disproportionality of response by the offender to the initiating, precipitating actions of the victim. I'm walking down the street, I bump into you, you're a different identity, you now chase me 3 blocks, and then you beat me unconscious. Well, that's out of proportion to me just bumping into you. So, you know, like, why would you do that? So the proportionality of the response can show the extent of the rage, and that's a determinant that we use to actually assist us in making the judgment. Number 6, patterns against members of a protected class. Someone's out there, they are preying on a certain group, on a certain class. Maybe you do it once, it's still a crime, but you do it twice, it's still a crime. But if there's a history that you've done it 6 times, 7 times, 8 times, well, then we can make a logical argument that you maybe you're selecting that person because of the class that he belongs to. Number 7, I call this the shift in motivation evolution. That the event starts as a non-biased crime, but there's a shift in motivation within the criminal evolution, turning the event into a hate crime. It normally requires a pretty substantial amount of evidence, but I give it a classical example. I'm parking my car, you're parking your car, we are going for the same parking space. We get into an argument. In the beginning of that evolution, that is a personal dispute. It's not a hate crime. We may argue and yell at each other. I may punch you. You know, that becomes criminal now. But then you now, then what happens is that one of the participants now starts chasing me down the street, starts yelling identity phrases, and now does a very serious act of violence on me. And so you can see that even though the evolution started as a non-hate crime criminal event, there's an evolution within the event. So sometimes you may have an occurrence where it starts out as a non-hate crime, but it changes. Number 8, date and time of occurrence. If it's around certain key holidays, that's a determinant that we factor into our judgment. And number 9, common sense review of the totality of the circumstances. You view these facts, you view the facts of the case, and you use these determinants in a contextualized judgment in the totality of these circumstances. Now, there's several notes here. One, the use of identity-oriented phrases does not automatically make an event a hate crime. You have to judge it in its totality. Likewise, the absence of identity-oriented phrases does not automatically make an event a non-hate crime. The above determinants ought to be applied contextually to the entire event evolution on an investigation. Some citywide stats. 2008, we had 234 cases. We are down from the year before. The police commissioner told you that over the last 16 years, we've had a trend down of 62% in reported hate crimes. Here's the 16-year trend down. In 1992, we had 627 cases, and as the city has become more orderly over the last 16 years, as crime has trended down, the overall crime rate has trended down. So as hate crimes, last year we had 234 cases. Here's something which is of interest to teachers, that what the police commissioner said is that 50% of our offenders, the brunt of our offenders, are in the 13 to 18, 13 to 19 age group. It makes sense. You are impulsive. You have not developed full logical reasoning capability. From a physiological point of view, a juvenile's brain hasn't been fully developed. So most of our offenders come in that 13 to 18, 13 to 19 age group. Just to let you know, for offender age, we go out to age 72. So, but 50% of hate crime offenders in the city of New York are under the age of 19. Here are some websites. The Anti-Defamation League has a great website to learn about hate crimes. The Southern Poverty Law Center also has a very strong website, and the Anti-Violence Project here in New York City has a very strong website. In my closing remarks, the key question that must be answered and supported by facts to make a criminal act a hate crime is, was the substantial motivation of the perpetrator to commit the criminal act the identity of the victim? Identity-motivated criminality, that's the takeaway. There's a question over there. Do we take some question? Yes, ma'am. Yeah, I could give you one. I don't have, I don't have it in my pocket, but. So, okay. That's good? All right, thank you.
Okay, thank you, Inspector. The next step is the crime has been committed. What happens when it comes into the legal system, into the court system? And for that, we called upon the Queens District Attorney's Office, and we have here today representing the Queens District Attorney's Office, the Chief of the Gang Violence and Hate Crimes Bureau, Mariella Herring.
Okay, good morning, everyone. As Dr. Flug indicated, my name is Mariella Herring. I'm the Bureau Chief of the Gang Violence and Hate Crimes Bureau of the Queens District Attorney's Office. The idea of creating a bureau in a district attorney's office that specializes in certain things is not a novel one, but when it comes to hate crime, it is critically important. These crimes have inherent factors, and as prosecutors, the more you see these types of incidents, the more you're able to detect what is and what isn't a hate crime. You learn to handle witnesses, handle victims, network with other agencies, learn to deal with the community concern when these incidents occur. So it's really important to have a hate crimes bureau, and I'm very happy that the district attorney put this bureau together to address very serious problems in our community. Let me just start again, and a lot of this is overlap, is the definition of a hate crime. Many times I get phone calls, well, this person committed a hate crime. One thing you must understand, there must be an underlying crime. Before we even get to the issue of whether it is a hate crime, there must be an underlying crime. For example, I'll get a phone call. I'm trying to get an apartment, and the landlord told me to get the hell out and used racial slurs. Well, there was no crime there. It may be a case of discrimination that may go to another agency, like the New York State Division of Human Rights, but it is not a crime and does not come under our jurisdiction. So very important, there must be a crime. The hate crime statute does not stand alone. It is attached to other crimes. And the idea is that when you commit a crime and it is motivated by bias, by hate, there should be an enhanced sentence. So the real definition of this, the real purpose of this statute is that it enhances the sentence. And we went over the actual statute, the language in the statute, and the protected classes: race, color, national origin, ancestry, gender, religion, religious practice, age, disability, and sexual orientation. Now, now the statute also says these are the only designated crimes that can be charged as a hate crime. Okay, so, and it's quite a number of crimes. Many are violent, aggravated assault, you have arsons. So these things must occur first before it can be charged as a hate crime. So for example, if there's an arson, it would be arson in the first degree as a hate crime. Okay, so again, emphasizing there must be a crime first. And the list goes on and on. Murder, manslaughter, petty larceny, sexual abuse. Again, as I said before, it's a sentencing enhancement statute. So what happens is, if you, for example, have a robbery in the second degree, which in our penal law is a C violent felony, when you charge it as a hate crime, it becomes tantamount to a B felony. So what happens is the offender is now subject to more jail time. Okay, so everything goes up one. When you have a D felony, it goes to a C felony. If you have an E felony, it goes to a D felony. And that's how our penal law is structured. There are grades to every felony, and when it's charged as a hate crime, it goes up one. And therefore, that person is now subject to more jail time, more penalties. How does law enforcement respond to hate crimes? As you heard from the New York City Police Department, there's the Hate Crimes Task Force, which is an excellent police unit. They go out, they interview witnesses, they canvass, they look for police surveillance tapes. They do what any detective would do and more. So they actually respond to the crime scene, to the local precinct where the crime or the incident has occurred. Now, who determines whether or not to contact the Hate Crimes Task Force? First, an incident occurs in a neighborhood, on a street, and the local precinct will take a look at the incident, and the duty captain will determine whether it is a possible bias. They don't determine that it is a bias case or a hate crime case. They just look to see if there's some overtone of perhaps a hate crime, and that's what triggers the call to the Hate Crimes Task Force. The Hate Crimes Task Force then sends detectives who, again, specialize in this type of crime, and they come to the precinct or they go to the crime scene and they start conducting their investigation. They will knock on every door. They will go to every store and see if there are tapes. They will talk to every witness. They do an extremely thorough job when it comes to a possible bias. Now, the Queens District Attorney's Office, as I said, we have our own bureau that deals with this, and we are a 24/7 operation. Our ADAs are available anytime a hate crime occurs. We are notified. We sometimes respond to the crime scene also to see what the story is, to speak to witnesses. We assist the police department in getting search warrants, in getting subpoenaed material, and talking about the case. Well, what do you think? Do you think this is a hate crime? And we talk a lot. And through the years, I've worked with Inspector Osgood, and we talk frequently about whether or not an incident is a hate crime. And I have to say, most of the time we agree. There may be times where we feel we have a strong enough case to go forward on a hate crime, or vice versa, where we don't feel we can prove it. It may be a hate crime, but can we prove it? When we are in court and we have your normal robbery or assault, we never have to prove the motive for the crime. It doesn't matter that the person stole the woman's pocketbook because he needed money to go to school, or you know, he had a drug addiction. We are not required to prove the motivation. When we have a hate crime, it is the only time that we must prove why the defendant did it. And that becomes a very difficult thing to do because we have to go into the person's mind. So these are the factors that we looked at. Again, this is a lot of overlap from what the inspector talked about. And we've gotten pretty experienced at this. We've had some pretty big crimes prosecuted by our office, and we've had pretty decent results. It is a very difficult thing to prove. As was stated before, the statements that are made during the crime, very important. Does it mean that every time there's a racial slur uttered during an incident that is a hate crime? No. But again, you put everything together, and this is just one factor that we look at. Is the victim and the defendant members of different groups? That's something that the inspector talked about. Is there any other motivation for the crime? Again, an unprovoked assault. There were no words before. Perhaps someone was leaving a location and just out of nowhere somebody, like the incident in Brooklyn. Is there any other motivation for the assault? Does the offender's conduct appear to be an overreaction? And the inspector talked about that. An overreaction, sure. There may be another reason, a traffic dispute, but does he then take, as was mentioned before, does he then take a bat and bash this person over the head over a simple fender bender? And again, very difficult, but you have to look at all the factors. Does the location of the crime? We've had some pretty vicious, in fact, there was a homicide many years ago of a man who had just left a gay bar. There was no other witnesses other than he was walking home and someone came out of a car and beat him to death with a baseball bat. And that case went unsolved for many years. There's no witnesses, but again, the question is, can we prove it? And that fact alone would not be enough to actually go forward and prosecute this individual as and charge them with murder as a hate crime. So again, just because we may not be able to charge the person as a hate crime That doesn't mean that it's not necessarily a hate crime. It just means that perhaps we don't have enough evidence to prove it beyond a reasonable doubt to a jury. The multiple criminal incidents, if you begin to see a pattern where the victim is consistently from one group, that's something we can look at, and we can perhaps charge a series of robberies as a hate crime. Does the crime appear to be timed with any holiday? Again, another factor. Does the victim's group, has the victim's group been involved in a recent public or political activity? Certainly after 9/11, there were many anti-Muslim incidents. There were many crimes committed against Sikhs in our community who were mistaken for Muslims. So again, the time period is very important in determining whether we have a hate crime. And has the offender ever expressed an animus against the victim's group? Does the defendant have tattoos, perhaps white supremacist tattoos? In a case out on the island a few years ago, you had someone who had lured some day laborers to a garage. And during the trial of that individual, it turned out he had certain tattoos. And the prosecution in that case was able to actually use that in their case in chief to prove the defendant's motivation in committing the violence. So there are many factors we look at. Again, this is not exhaustive. Every case is different. And as I said before, it's a very difficult thing to prove, and it's a very difficult case to prosecute because the community is very, very interested in these cases. It really touches so many groups when something like this happens, not just from the victim's group, from the defendant's group too. So it really puts our office and the police department on high alert, because we want to make sure that they have confidence in the system and that we conduct our investigation free of any pressure from community groups or organizations. So that's pretty much how we prosecute hate crimes. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mariella. And now for the state, I'd like to call upon Carolyn Downey, General Counsel of the New York State Division on Human Rights, regarding the New York human rights law.
We're running a little late, and I have 5 minutes to talk about the human rights law, which I could easily spend 5 days or 5 years talking about because I've been at the division so long. But I was thinking about this, and I said to the commissioner the other day, I'll have to do it like one of those 1-minute Shakespeare plays, and just really move it along really quick, like, the old king, 3 daughters, 2 bad, 1 good, that kind of thing. Didn't work out. Anyway, the New York State human rights law, I was thinking about that when I was listening to the other presentations, and I think what I want to focus on a bit is some of the categories that we cover. We obviously do it in a civil manner as opposed to a criminal manner, so we have some different aspects to it. But the areas that we cover, I think, are really important to look at and things that you'll sort of need to know, because it's not always obvious, and discrimination categories or categories of protected classes are not always necessarily obvious, and we spend some time looking at those. First, civil rights law, human rights law in the United States or in the world. New York should really be very proud of its history in this area. It was 1945, right after the Second World War. And the state legislature passed then the law against discrimination, which prohibited discrimination in employment on the basis of race, color, creed, and then public accommodations was added in '52, housing added a little later, and over the years, many categories have been added, including coverage of educational institutions, which I'll get into in a minute. And these are the categories, and they're very similar to the ones that you've already heard about. And Cliff Mulqueen from the City Commission is going to be talking in the other 5 minutes about some additional ones that the City Commission covers as well. But the race, color, creed, they're somewhat self-explanatory, but not necessarily. Those are the original ones, have been around for a long time. But self-identification is usually the basis for determining a racial category, at least as we interpret it under our law. And with respect to creed, it's a very broad definition of creed under the human rights law. It's not religion, which is what Title VII, for example, says on a federal basis. It's creed, and it's really a particular religious affiliation isn't required. Atheism and agnosticism can be considered creeds as well. And we do have a lot of coverage, as was mentioned earlier, protection for religious observance and employment and religious garb that people wear. And these are issues I know that can come up in the school setting and I know you address those in your own regulations. National origin is a category that is, again, a little bit narrower in our law than under the city human rights law. Ours does not include alienage, that is to say citizenship status, but it does include the country from which you originate or your ancestors originated. So it isn't a matter of having to be from an individual having to be from a particular country. It really goes to ancestry as well. Age in the human rights law covers people 18 years of age and over, and that's for purposes of age discrimination. So it's 18 until, the end. You're covered by the human rights law with respect to age discrimination, but in addressing this group, that's only for purposes of age discrimination. People younger than 18 can have causes of action under the human rights law and do for respect to other kinds of discrimination, race, sex, disability, etc. And if they do bring a claim under the human rights law, they have to do so just from a legal standpoint by a parent or guardian, but people can and do bring cases, and our school cases are usually, certainly the high school and intermediate school cases are brought by parents on behalf of their children for incidents that have happened to the children. Disability is a huge area that we cover, and it's a very, very broad definition under the New York State human rights law, much broader than the federal law, even though the federal law has recently been amended and broadened itself. But you don't have to spend a lot of time thinking about whether something that appears to be a disability is a disability under the human rights law, because we will very likely consider it a disability. Reasonable accommodation is another aspect of disability protection, and that's where most of our cases come with respect to determining what kinds of steps an employer or a housing provider or an educational institution should be taking with respect to accommodating the disabilities of its employees, or in this case, students. And I know there are many other aspects of, and many other laws that the school system is answerable to with respect to accommodation of disabilities, but it does overlap with our law as well. Sexual orientation, I skipped sex here, and I shouldn't, because we have a long and really good history with respect to sex discrimination and particularly pregnancy discrimination, where in the early days in the 60s, even before I was at the State Division of Human Rights, there was a lot of law that was very forward-thinking in terms of protecting pregnancy discrimination as sex discrimination, and many of those cases were school teachers, by the way. I mean, there were old laws or regulations where teachers, had to leave school immediately if they were pregnant and couldn't return, and all kinds of draconian things that no longer exist, and the State Division was really in the forefront of that. Sexual harassment, of course, and all kinds of harassment, which is much of what you'll see and be thinking about in the course of the rest of today and the case studies. Harassment is always a subset of any of these categories. It's assumed to be a subset. And sexual harassment is, of course, a big one, but racial harassment, religious harassment, disability harassment, we see all of those, and I think you see all of those or know of all of those. Sexual orientation has been added to our law a few years ago. Again, it's one where there is a great deal of harassment, both in the workplace and in school settings. So it's something that we see a lot of. Human rights law recently was interpreted as requiring same-sex marriages in other jurisdictions to be recognized within the state of New York. You've probably heard about that in various guises, but it was under the human rights law. It wasn't a case before the division, it was a human rights law case in court, but it was under the human rights law that occurred. So there really is a great deal, a real breadth of coverage in what we have going on in New York State under this law. Marital status and military status, we probably don't have to cover too much today. That probably is not an issue. We don't get a lot of military status cases. There are other protections under federal military law to some degree. This largely went to housing discrimination. And marital status is, again, something that is not, that we don't see a lot of, and it really goes to the status of whether you're married, single, divorced, or widowed, and not the person to whom you're married. So there's very little case on that. The arrest and conviction sections, I do want to spend a minute with, because whenever I get a captive audience, I like to spend a minute with this, because it's such an important part of our law and something that people don't know about, and something that provides so much protection for New Yorkers in general. And basically, employers and licensing agencies, and credit providers, insurers can't ask about arrest records that were resolved in individuals' favor. And they can't ask about youthful offender status, and they can't ask about sealed records. And that should be gotten out to more people, employers and citizens and non-citizens of the state of New York alike, just because it is really a huge protection that we all should know about as New Yorkers. And the other aspect of that is a criminal conviction, where people do have an actual criminal conviction record. There still can't be blanket refusals to hire. There has to be a weighing by the employer or potential employer as to what the effect of that conviction might have on the employment. It can't be a blanket refusal to hire, and we see it all the time. We have a lot of cases in this, and we really, really want, if you know of any, please send them to us, because it's an area we're really pursuing very thoroughly. The other two predisposing genetic characteristics we hardly ever see, but we hope to someday as science improves. And we also cover familial status in housing and credit. And I'm going to wrap up in a minute, because I have to. But I just wanted to cover, I could go on. I just wanted to cover the areas that we do cover, which is employment, housing, places of public accommodation of all kinds, hotels, theaters, hospitals, doctors' offices. It's fairly broad, where goods and services are provided. Credit transactions. The next one is where we gotcha in non-sectarian tax-exempt educational institutions. So we really cover all educational institutions other than religious schools. So that's the non-sectarian part. I will tell you there is a dispute in the courts as to whether, what the extent of our jurisdiction is, and one day that will be resolved, and if I come back again, I may be able to tell you how it's resolved, but we have jurisdiction over non-sectarian tax-exempt educational institutions, volunteer firefighting organizations, boycotting, blacklisting, and all circumstances of hiring, firing, termination, etc. I will really skip, but I just want to spend 1 minute on what our process is, so that people know, so that your students know, so that you know that you can file a complaint in the state of New York, and we will investigate it thoroughly and promptly. That didn't always used to be the case about the prompt part, but it is now. And we have about 7,000 cases that we get in every year. We have offices around the state, 11 offices from Buffalo down to Suffolk County, and we take these complaints in, we investigate them. We have a fact-finding conference, or at least an investigation. We determine whether there's probable cause. If there is, it goes to a public hearing before an administrative law judge. It's really quite formal. It's a trial. And a recommended order is made to the commissioner, who's sitting right here in the front row, who decides all our cases of discrimination. He's very busy. And we then appeal the case, or parties can appeal the case into court from there. So it's really quite a formal process, and one that really provides excellent due process. People can also go into court under the law, but 7,000 people or so come to us every year, and we do the best that we can to help them. So we're really glad to be here and aiding in this sort of subsection of this, which, you know, I mean, that's why I want to get the word out about the law generally to some degree, because I want New Yorkers to know more about this great law of over 60 years of age. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Like a pro. Thank you. Thank you. By the way, in your packets that you got when you registered, you'll find a multicolored booklet that goes over every one of the topics Ms. Downey said, and you'll also find one from representing the law in New York. And now finally, to take all of this back to the classroom, I'd like to call on Connie Cuddle, Department of Education, Office of Youth and School Development.
It's been a pleasure to work with our collaborative partners on today's conference. You are the pilot conference. We're going to roll this conference out again starting in September for all the other 4 boroughs, so Queens is in the forefront. And I have to tell you that it's been a pleasure working with Mariella and with from the Queens DA's office and from Mike Osgood from the police department and Lee Hudson from the New York City Commission on Human Rights, and with the Roberto Chavez and everybody from the New York State Commission on Human Rights. But my goal here is to try to put them out of business. Why am I not getting a... here we go. Okay. So we get our students every single day, and they're looking to us to provide a safe and supportive environment for everyone. And we've got 2 kinds of documents that help us do that. One is the discipline code, and I'm sure everybody here as an educator knows that discipline code. And the only thing that I want to mention, whether it's on the K-5 level or the 6 to 12 level, we take this kind of behavior very seriously. There are 5 levels to the discipline code. The language, the slurs, is a level 3, and the behavior is a level 4. The only thing that's higher in our discipline code is incidents of group violence and weapons possession and very, very egregious behavior. 2 chancellor's regulations speak to the work that we're looking at today. One is 831, student-to-student sexual harassment, which has been on the books for quite some time, and the second is 832, which was promulgated in September of this school year, student-to-student bias-based harassment, intimidation, or bullying. It's a very, very important one. Both of them basically start out with the same kind of statement. 831 talks about an environment free from sexual harassment. 832 talks about an environment free from harassment, intimidation, or bullying committed by students against other students. For all the same kinds of related protected classes, we've got a few additional ones in there based on input from students and from what we know to be issues for our kids. Key part of it is it's not just on school grounds during the school day, it's before and after school, it's on school buses, and it's at any event that we as a school system are promulgating, or if it happens in the community, but the nexus, the connection to that event is the school. 832 asks for the principal to designate at least 1 staff member, and if you look at the Chancellor's Reg, you'll see that we have encouraged them to designate more than 1 staff member to be the liaison. Some of you here are the RFA, the Respect for All liaisons, and I hope when we walk into your schools we see those posters put up and your names are on the posters. You are the people that students feel comfortable in being able to go to report these kinds of incidents, because sometimes, particularly for early adolescents, they think that they need to be able to handle everything on their own, and they're worried about reporting, or they're ashamed about having to report that somebody has been picking on them for their identity. The posters are out there. They were delivered with the discipline code. They will be delivered again in September with the discipline code for 2009-2010. The regulation is very clear in terms of the fact that this has to be reviewed every year with faculty and with students, that the regulation has to be available to parents and school staff and students upon request. And we gave out 2 different brochures. We've been handing out a letter to parents for the students to backpack on student-to-student peer sexual harassment. We changed it into a brochure to make it more user-friendly for the kids, and then we have the regular Respect for All brochure. And they need to get them, whether they get them in September or if a kid comes in the middle of the year, and we all know that we are a city of immigrants and we are constantly having kids come in over the counter during the course of the year. They need to be provided with this as well. We provide to every one of your schools, based on the languages that are spoken in your schools, translated copies of the brochure in 8 languages, and they are also up on the website. Reporting, it's up to us as school personnel. If we see it, we need to report it, we need to make sure it's followed through on, and we need to intervene. And we've also put in that if a student feels uncomfortable making the report at school for whatever reason, or maybe they've made the report and they feel that the school is not being responsive, that there's a website, there's a web address that they can send in the report to. That comes to the Office of School and Youth Development. Myself and a number of other colleagues monitor that on a daily basis. I'm going to turn the back over to, I'm sorry, one more. Accountability. If a student has been found to violate either the Chancellor's regulation, and obviously then that would be either one or both of those discipline code infractions, A443 outlines the student discipline process, and they will be held accountable according to that process. The principal needs, and or his designee, and many of you are deans in this room or AP security, needs to make sure that the behavior has stopped. We're about to break out into workshops where you're going to be very active. I know we've been talking at you. So Arthur is going to direct you to where you're going for your breakout rooms. If we just hold on 1 minute. Thank you.
Okay, before we move, please, may I have your attention? Please, may I have your attention? I made a mistake. And normally I would say, my secretary didn't tell me. That probably would qualify me for sexual harassment. And secondly, I don't have a secretary. But what I'd like to do, and deeply apologize, because one of the people who is with us today, who's really been a stalwart in providing us with background and staff for this, I completely forgot to introduce. And I'd like to call him up briefly. Cliff Mulqueen, Deputy Commissioner and General Counsel for the New York City Department on Human Rights. Cliff.
All right, good morning, everybody. I'm not offended.
What does it mean? What do you need?
The first
I guess the theme for today is that there's a lot of overlap when it comes to anti-discrimination law, whether it be the police department and the DA's office, or the New York State Division on Human Rights, or the New York City Division on Human Rights, and in fact the EEOC, the Equal Employment Opportunity Commission, who is not here today. I'm not going to repeat everything Caroline said. Essentially, the city's human rights law and the New York State human rights law are similar, and our offices work in a similar fashion. But what I do want to focus on are the differences, because there are some people that are covered by the New York City human rights law that won't be covered by the state human rights law. When you guys go to your breakout groups, you're going to be given this sheet of paper, 2 sides, that has all the information about the Commission on Human Rights. I just want to say that we're available. If you have any questions, our website is on this piece of paper. Just send me an email, and I will respond to you probably within a day or two. You could also reach us by calling 311. You just say the word discrimination, and they'll direct you right to our office. Okay, so again, this is the list of protected classes. and a comparison of the EEOC and the New York State Division on Human Rights and what classes are covered. Again, this sheet of paper will be with you when you go to your breakout rooms. I don't want to repeat everything Carolyn said. Instead of sex, we refer to it as gender discrimination. Like the State Human Rights Division, the sexual harassment is covered under gender discrimination. So are certain disabilities like pregnancy. An important distinction between our law and the State Division law is that gender identity, whether it be transgendered individuals, are specifically or explicitly covered under the human rights law. It's not quite clear under the state law. We also have a coverage for a partnership status. If you're in a domestic partnership, you're protected under the New York City human rights law just by virtue of you being in that domestic partnership. As Carolyn mentioned, we also cover alienage and citizenship status. So if you're here in the United States legally, no one should be discriminating against you in employment, for instance, if you're here legally. We also have protections for victims of domestic violence, stalking, and sex offenses. That's in the employment setting. We do not have protection for genetic characteristics, but we would probably consider that a disability under the law, so individuals would be protected. We also have family status and housing. We have lawful occupation. I guess the lawyers weren't being rented homes because they were litigious, so they put a little protection in there for themselves. And our newest protected class is lawful source of income. Individuals who are getting Section 8, other federal rent subsidies, Social Security, pensions, those individuals cannot be discriminated against when trying to rent a house. Okay, so again, this sheet is, it'll be in your breakout rooms. It has our contact information. Feel free to contact us, and I will get back to you. Okay, thank you.
Cliff, thank you. Thank you, Cliff. Okay, for your breakout rooms, let me give you some travel directions. If your breakout room is M136, this is where you stay. If you're in M140 or M142, go up to the back. It's right adjacent to the desk where you signed in. All other breakout rooms are on this level, and you'll see the signs posted directing you there. Plus, there will be people there directing you. Thank you.